Hey guys, welcome to Shino's Arsenal. I'm going to be doing a match preview for Fulham versus Arsenal. Arsenal play Fulham away at Craven Cottage tomorrow. And so I want to do a short little preview to just kind of talk about the ins and outs of that matchup. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. To start off with, Arsenal, played midweek against Sporting in Lisbon and drew 2-2, so they're able to keep that tie alive going back to the Emirates in the round of 16 of the Europa League. So now full focus is on the game against Fulham. And if you've been watching Fulham this season, you will, look at them as a team that's formidable, a team that's pushing for European qualification and has players that can hurt you. Manar Solomon has 5 goals in 5 uh, matches for Fulham, so he's on form. I've been really impressed with Kenny Tete as well as Anthony Robinson. They're fullbacks. They're quite, athletic, and they're good tacklers, and they add a dynamism to the back line of Fulham. Tim Ream is having a really good season. We all know Bern Leno is a really, really good goalkeeper. Willian has also looked good for Fulham. So there are some good players there. Mitrovic is also carries a threat. I think Fulham are one of the teams in the Premier League that have the most headed goals, probably coming from Mitrovic. So they're a team that has a bunch of different weapons. They have speed on the wings. They have a big target man. They have some good midfielders, some really direct fullbacks. And so Arsenal cannot look at this game as anything other than a really, really difficult fixture, not to mention it's a London derby. And yeah, so, I mean, there's no easy games in the Premier League. We all know that. So, how has Arsenal kind of looked over the last couple of games? We know that we've been able to string together 4 wins in a row. And so we are in good form, whereas Fulham not in so great form. I can just pull up their their uh, their record now. They lost their last game to Brentford, and then they drew the game before, then they had 2 wins in a row, and then they drew a game. So, not terrible form. Like, if they had not lost to Brentford, they'd be on an unbeaten run. But if you kind of watch Fulham, they don't have the same vigor as they did pre-World Cup, which I think you can kind of say the same thing about Arsenal. Both teams are still playing well, but you can tell that there's just a little bit of something missing, just a little bit of something missing. And a lot of Arsenal fans will say that thing that's missing is probably Gabriel Jesus. We know the front line is looking a little thin. Trossard, Eddie Nketiah, and Gabriel Jesus will all not be available for this game. And Odegaard is even questionable because he is ill. So we could be looking at a front line, a front four that don't really play together very often. The consistency that we had at the beginning of the season, like pre-World Cup, of pretty much the same starting 11, we've seen that be kind of ruptured over the last couple of weeks as Arsenal has sustained some injuries here and there. And looking at Fulham, they're going to have a couple of players out, but the most notable one is probably João Palhinha. Outside of the big six, he's probably been the best central defensive midfielder. When he's in their side, they do look like a European team, a team that could be playing in Europa, Conference League, right on the edges. And so without him, they do lose a little bit of steel. And I'm not really sure how Marco Silva is going to combat that, because one of Arsenal's biggest strengths is the midfield. Thomas Partey, Granit Xhaka, and Odegaard have been, for the entire season and even a little bit of last season, the best midfield 3 in the league. So looking at that matchup, Arsenal should be kind of chomping at the bit because they don't have their best midfielder. But that's not to say that they don't have players that can hurt you. Andreas Pereira is also having a really good season. Last time I checked, like, he was one of the biggest chance creators in the Premier League. Nobody talks about him because he plays for Fulham, but he is a dangerous player. So not to say it's a cakewalk, but when we put their midfield up against our midfield, I do think we will win that midfield battle. Now, one thing that's been, really talked about amongst Arsenal fans is the defense. Are we leaking more goals? Are we, a little shaky, a little leaky back there? And I would say that, I do think that we have been a little bit more susceptible to goals being scored off of set pieces and dead ball situations more than anything. I also think, like, the way that the game looks, because we've been playing against a lot of low blocks, the teams that we're playing against really look like they are super dangerous, because usually when they get in a chance to attack, they are 2v2 or 3v2 against just our center backs. And so I think the optics of that makes it seem like defensively we're not anywhere near what we were at the beginning of the season. We're not really conceding more goals, it's the type of goals that we're conceding. And what concerns me is that it doesn't really seem like we have figured out how to defend corners again. And again, Fulham have a really big number 9 and Mitrovic that eats that. Like, that is his bread and butter, is those balls off of corners and dead ball situations that he can get his head on and make something happen. Tim Ream as well, Diop, that they have as a center back pairing. They're also big and like to get into the box and try to disrupt things. And so if we're not good defensively on those dead ball situations, I do think that we can be hurt there as well. One of their most dangerous players is Menor Solomon, a winger that they have on loan from Shakhtar Donetsk. And like I said at the beginning, he has 5 goals in 5 matches. And he's he's an interesting player because he's kind of like Saka on the left, where you kind of know what he's going to do, but he's so good at it, you can't stop him. And he loves to cut in on his right foot and get right there at the edge of the box and then hit that curling shot with his right foot into the left side of the net. And so the goalkeepers left are right, you know? So it'll be interesting to see if Manor Solomon or Willian starts, because I think they both kind of start on the same sides, or if he'll decide to play both of them to give them maximum output or whatever. But from an Arsenal perspective, I think just what we're all hoping is that we can make sure that we come out of there with a clean sheet. We need to kind of get those clean sheets going again and learn how to defend corners and things like that. And with a front line that probably hasn't played much football together, we have to have a really good defensive game. When we play with our usual front three, or even the front three of Nketiah and Martinelli and Saka, we score quite a bit of goals. So even if we make mistakes defensively, we can always kind of make it up. I don't think that that's going to be the case at Craven Cottage. I think we're going to have to keep the game tight. I think we're going to have to limit their chances and limit the goals and really get out of there with a clean sheet. The front line that I anticipate, or I would like to see against Fulham, and I'll pull up my starting 11. It'll be here. I'm pointing at it. Hopefully it pops up right there. But that's the starting 11 that I would go with. The same back 5 that we always know: Ramsdale, White, Gabriel, Saliba, and Zinchenko. The same midfield. I am hoping that Odegaard is ready to go. So you start Partey, Xhaka, and Odegaard. And then the front line, I would just take Reece Nelson out and put Fabio Vieira in on the left, play Martinelli through the middle, because that's the only chance we really have, and Saka off of the right. Now, I know some people will be like, why would you put Fabio Vieira on the left? It's because he can drift inward, kind of like Trossard, and then Martinelli can start off wide, and they have some sort of connection. And I didn't see much of a connection between Reece Nelson and Martinelli in the week. And I just think we need to get players that can interchange in those positions to cause chaos. And those two can do it. Do I really want Fabio Vieira sitting, in the false 9 position the entire game? No. But Arsenal's strength is the chaos that's created between the front players switching positions and moving those defenders around. We're not really going to have that, I don't think, with Reece Nelson, but you can have it with Fabio Vieira. So I would start Fabio Vieira off of the left, let Martinelli go through the middle. And when we're building up and we're trying to build through the thirds, let Fabio Vieira come central. And when we're on the counter attack or we're trying to hit them with more direct balls, play Martinelli over the top or something like that. Saka will do Saka things. We know he's fine. He'll be on that side cooking and doing his thing. And if things don't work out and we need to make a change, then you can bring Reece Nelson in a more similar game state to what maybe it was against Bournemouth, and maybe get the most out of him in that capacity. But Arsenal really need to get 3 points from this game. We have Fulham away, and then we have Crystal Palace at home. And after the international break, we have Leeds at home. And it's important to get maximum points from these games, because we all know April is the run-in, and that's when we're going to play the big dogs away from home. And we need to make sure that we capitalize on these scenarios. But it's not going to be anywhere near as smooth sailing as I think some Arsenal fans think it's going to be. Even though it may be a weekend and not as bright Fulham side, they are still quite dangerous. They will be at home. It's a London derby, and there's too many narratives of Willian and Leno for anybody to think that this is just going to go like normal. But with our most of our spine intact of Saliba and Gabriel, Ramsdale and Thomas Partey, and hopefully Odegaard, will be able to have enough continuity within the team to maybe even overcompensate from a little bit of, bumpiness up top, because I'm not quite sure how many goals that group will score. So my score prediction is 2-1 Arsenal, 3 points in the bag, and hopefully we go back to the Emirates midweek to go through to the next round of the Europa League against Sporting. So let me know in the comment section what you guys thought about this, what your score prediction is, how you think the game will go, if you disagree with me on the starting 11 or you agree, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.